and welcome to Cartoon Clearance with Meg and Dan. I'm Meg,
And I'm Dan.
and let's get our Ramblepants on because today we're talking about the 1977 Rankin and Bass movie, The Hobbit.
I'll give a little bit of background information on this movie before we start. This was adapted, obviously, from the 1936 story by J.R.R. Tolkien by Arthur Rankin and Jules Bass. It was debuted on NBC November 27th of 1977. Alongside with it, a picture book and an album release were released. I think there was some other pieces of media that were released with it, but those were the big ones, I believe. It was nominated for a Hugo Award, but lost, to a little film called Star Wars. Nothing big. The animation of the film was done by a precursor to the Studio Ghibli company. They were called Topcraft Animation. The art style was influenced by Arthur Rackham's medieval mythic art style that you can see in turn-of-the-century picture books. Meg, would you like to give a summary of The Hobbit?
Yep, I'm not sure if anyone really needs it at this point, considering how popular it is, but just in case nobody knows what this movie is about.
Or the story generally.
Yeah, the story. So you have a little homebody hobbit named Bilbo Baggins, and he's approached by a wizard named Gandalf, you may have heard of him, and a band of dwarves who in this movie are pretty much just background noise for the most part.
I wouldn't even say noise, they don't talk.
They're really just there to fill space and to provide a backdrop for the story, but
yeah.
we'll get to that later. So, they go off on an adventure across the fantastical land of Middle-earth to reclaim the dwarves' lost homeland, which was usurped by a fearsome dragon, Smaug, who is not voiced by Benedict Cumberbatch in this one. And Bilbo learns to love adventure as they battle against all sorts of creatures like trolls, goblins, fuzzy spiders. He discovers
anorexic-looking elves.
He discovers a certain magic ring. He uses his wits to tick off a big dragon because that's always the best idea. Yeah, so Daniel, what do you think about this movie?
It should be stated that I picked this movie because it's my favorite movie from my childhood. So I love it. Everything about this movie I really love. I'll admit there are some faults and some things we'll talk about later, but I think it still holds up really well today. It's got some of my favorite music ever in a movie. It ripped right out of the lines from The Hobbit. I love the way the characters look. The backdrops look cool, and I love the voice performances of most of the actors. I really love, particularly of Gandalf, voiced by, if anyone knows directors, John Huston, pretty famous director. And also, I believe some Hanna-Barbera actors later on, like Don Messick, have been in there.
And of course, the Rankin and Bass,
Yeah. I actually didn't know. I watched a lot of Rankin and Bass apparently as a child. I didn't realize they made the stop animation holiday specials like Jack Frost,
Rudolph
or
the Red-Nosed Reindeer,
Frosty and Rudolph's New Year and stuff like that. Watching it as an adult with that in mind now, there's a lot of things like there's a wind sound effect where I listen to it, I go, oh, okay, that's definitely, they use that in every movie they make.
I also recognize one or two from The Last Unicorn, which
they also make The Last Unicorn.
Someone actually told me that the voice of Bilbo in this movie was the same person who voiced Schmendrick the Magician in The Last Unicorn, but I didn't check that.
That's Alan Arkin.
To me. Oh yeah?
No, Alan Arkin, who actually, fun fact for anyone out there, he wrote the Banana Boat song, Hey Mr. Tallyman, tally me banana.
Really?
Yeah, he actually wrote, but he's also an actor on top of that. I think people of our generation might know him best as the grandpa from Little Miss Sunshine. Meg, how did you like the Hobbit?
Well, I think the first thing that jumped out at me was that the music was great.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked the music. As someone who did not grow up with this movie and doesn't have a particular fanatic attachment to the books or, Tolkien in general, I've read them, but it's not like, my favorite.
Yeah, it's
book
not your
ever.
favorite.
I noticed some flaws, but overall I thought it was pretty good. I thought that the pacing was really rushed, especially early on. So it opens with narration that's read straight from the book, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it is.
Where it's, talking about the once upon a time there was, a hole in the ground, but it wasn't a dirty hole or a wet hole. It was a nice hole. And then it kind of jumps right into the story from there. And you have Bilbo just kind of outside with his pipe, and then all of a sudden Gandalf appears and is like, "Bilbo Baggins, you're going on an adventure." And Bilbo's like, "What?" So that was kind of abrupt. It's like it's kind of like if in Harry Potter, you
if
just
Hagrid just showed up.
A shot
Hagrid was
Harry
like, "You're a wizard. Bam, you're a pig."
Harry just chilling out under the cupboard, like in the cupboard under the stairs, and then all of a sudden Hagrid busts in. "You're a wizard, Harry." What? Okay, I guess.
Or you could even redact that further. The minute they drop him off at the Dursleys, Hagrid just picks him up and then puts him to Hogwarts immediately. No, I personally think that scene's done all right. In the book, there'd probably be a lot of comparisons between this and the book. Rightfully so, I think. It's normal to compare these things. I think I don't mind, because in the book it's one chapter, but it's a little bit more drawn out. Like the dwarves arrive one by one. Mm-hmm. Gandalf also does that too. But in a visual form, I don't think you need to necessarily like wait half an hour to watch all these dwarves come in. So I'm perfectly okay.
Agree. It's just that
but there are parts I agree with you, like they'll be walking for 2 seconds and then it'll cut to a scene where they're climbing a mountain, and then they'll be like, "Ooh, how did Gandalf get there?" And they'll be like, "I don't know." And then it cuts to them like camping out, and then they're trolls. Trolls. I'll admit the beginning is a little rushed, but I think
that it would have been better if they had chosen like a different passage of the book to use as the opening narration. I think that rather than describing Bilbo's hole that he lived in, it would have been better to give a description of Bilbo, and then it would have felt a little bit more eased in. And, I think that they did a good thing in terms of getting his character down. He had a line where he was like, "Oh, just once I would want to see what an adventure is like."
Yeah,
because in the book,
to hear the pine trees.
Yeah, in the
I don't know
book,
how you do that.
I remember them describing, he's a hobbit, and hobbits like are famous homebodies, but he has like a little bit of a wild streak in him, and I think they did a fairly good job at getting that with that little comment of his. And also, as the opening credits were playing, you got to see a dream sequence of Bilbo.
Yeah,
dreaming
I love that
he was like a king and people were coming and bringing him wealth. So, you do get to see a little bit of the.
It's there. It's not just, I guess I'll go.
Yeah.
Because you told me I should. It's like he could have chosen to not done. Like he did agree, but the dwarves did all leave and they were outside. So but with the dream sequence, I did like that you do see his dreams of being. I wouldn't even say a king, but he has wider ambitions than just smoking a pipe and tending to his garden.
Yeah. So then they're on their way, and like you were saying, the transitioning was really abrupt, and it was
they needed better transitions.
Yeah, they're walking for 2 seconds, and Bilbo's complaining, but really it just looks like they've been traveling for like maybe a day.
Yeah.
And not through that much, hardship.
And I think the funny thing is that the music in this movie themes and underscores a lot of different scenes, and you could have had several scenes to just have them walking around and put it to a music montage, and it would have been fine. Mm-hmm. But that's the one part that it doesn't. But they love to always go back to the Greatest Adventure theme.
Oh yes, so there's that one song, The Greatest Adventure, that little bits of it play over the course of the movie, and sometimes it works.
It's a little funny at some points, like Bilbo just like pick up something and be like, "The greatest adventure."
Yeah.
And then it'll stop there and just keep walking.
Yeah. And
or Gandalf will be like, "Here's a book. The greatest," and then okay.
Like I feel like I can kind of see what they're going for with that, because it kind of gives it a feel of like hearing a bard singing
Yeah.
a song and telling a tale, and
It's a cue to the audience
it's
also.
cool to see that kind of continuity throughout the story, but at the same time there were parts where it just kind of made me giggle because
Yeah.
you
Also,
have
there's
like
no bard.
this really tense moment where Bilbo is like, in the tunnel about to go into Smaug's lair, and all of a sudden,
The greatest adventure.
yeah, and it's just kind of like, okay, it's maybe not to the point of mood whiplash, but
No.
it was a little unfitting.
Like, I like the scene because, like, he said, like, but it's mostly because of the dialogue. Because at that scene, Bilbo's like, if I take one more step, this is one step I can't, like, I can't go back. I gotta keep going forward. A big part of my, I guess, growing up is now going this way. And then they have the Greatest Adventure theme, and it's a little giggle worthy, but I do like it. I don't think, like, it makes me laugh at points, but I also do really like all the music, and it does tailor the themes and the characters really well.
Yeah, definitely. And that's why that's just like a minor thing, and I can see why they did it. It makes sense why they did it. It just
Yeah.
was
Speaking
funny.
of Bilbo, I think we can talk about him because he's clearly the main character of the film. But he does, he carries the film, much like the original story as well. And I think he's a very good main character in that he's very interesting. He's not boring. And I think a lot of times when you have a vast, complicated, mythological, fictional world, you usually have a main character who's sort of like the empty vessel. It's like you go through him, you inhabit him to explore the rest of the world. So he's like the fish out of water, like, oh, what's this? And Bilbo still does that,
Right.
but he still has his own things to bring to the table. For example, he'll, like, when they go to Elrond at Rivendell, and they're talking about the map, and he goes, oh, what are runes? And then one of the dwarves says, runes are, ancient writings, and you can only read them under, like, the moonlight. These are special ones. It's like, okay, I wouldn't have known that. Only a couple people know that. So it's not like, what's a sword?
Yeah.
It's like, what's a goblin? It's like, no, it's like, he knows some stuff. And the other thing about Bilbo is he's witty, and he uses his cleverness to get out of situations. And I think that's a really cool thing to have in a book.
Oh, definitely.
Or a film or whatever. A character who isn't the sure shot hero jumping into the battle. Even in the finale of the film, the last battle, Bilbo goes, I don't think I'll ever understand wars. And he just puts his ring on and sits back. In the book, it's a little different. But in this, I do like it how he just kind of puts the ring on and sits under a tree and, like,
just waits it out. Yeah.
And he's like, oh my gosh, how many armies are here?
Yeah, no, like, he's got a personality. He's
it's a great
he's pretty
personality.
funny. Like, I just love he's kind of, the cultured, well, more cultured than the
A dwarf.
dwarves. He appreciates the comforts in life, and just, I love how mildly affronted he sounds at anything. So, like, he's confronted by Smeagol in the cave below, like, the orc lair, not orc, beneath the goblin lair. Smeagol's like, oh, if you don't answer our riddle right, we're gonna eat you. And Bilbo's just like, oh, I say.
That just like, he
made
just
me
said,
laugh.
he just remarked that, like, it's like, ooh, that lady's cute. Well, I do say, man.
I don't like the color of your jacket, sir.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's like,
I
he's
say.
very posh, I guess would be a good way of describing Bilbo.
Yeah.
But I do love the way he is voiced by a professional actor. His name's Orson Bean.
Okay.
I'm not really familiar with most of his other works, other than he's also in the sequel, the Return of the King sequel, Rankin and Bass made. He voices Frodo in that. But he does have good delivery in his lines. Not all of the voice acting is, like, flawless.
Yeah.
But Orson Bean, John Huston, and a couple other actors really do a good job of voicing their characters, I think. And Orson Bean really comes through in his sort of glibness with Bilbo and his sort of, I wouldn't say snarky, but he has a sort of sardonic way about him, would you say?
I would agree.
Like, one of your favorite lines where he gets lit on, he escapes Smaug. Would you like to talk about that?
Oh, yeah, he's, running out of the tunnel after Smaug, like, breathes fire at him, because of course he had to taunt him before he left. Always the best idea, just,
Yeah.
Give,
Who would have thought that a dragon would get mad, that you invaded his horde that he
and
stole?
then pretty much did the equivalent of giving him the finger before you ran out through the side door.
Yeah.
So he runs back out and meets the dwarves, and the dwarves are like, "Oh, hey, welcome back! You did it! Blah blah blah. We're happy to see you." And Bilbo says something to the effect of, "Oh well, I would prefer a more pragmatic welcome. In other words, extinguish me!" And he runs around,
butt's
his
on fire,
butt's flaming, and I laughed at that too. That was
it's very. I think getting back to the whole package. I think The Hobbit is fun.
Yes.
And I watched it a lot as a kid, and I think it really shaped my tastes in what I like to watch. I like the adventures. I like that Bilbo was this unsure, unlikely hero. And when you're a kid, probably the same size as the Hobbit, you feel like a fish out of water in this world that you don't even know about. And I loved it. I just liked everything about it. The music. I wanted to go on adventures, and there are things as an adult that I watch and I think, wow, that's actually pretty poignant. Like, there's a scene where they're in Mirkwood, and Bilbo is talking about having to be pushed up into the trees to see. He was voted the one who would climb the tree to see if they were close to the edge of the forest. And he looks out and he sees all these butterflies, and his narration comes in, and he's talking about, he's like, I realized how far away from home I really was, and I really missed it. And at the same time, I didn't know if I ever really wanted to go back home.
Yeah, that was
because I've seen so much of the moment. Not the moment. I've seen so much of the world, and a different song, Not the Greatest Adventure, kicks in, which I also, I'm a huge Lord of the Rings, Tolkien, Hobbit fan, and I know the song that kicks in at that point is in the book. They sing it later, like towards the end, and Bilbo sings it out of like a reminiscence of all the adventures, and Gandalf's like, whoa, that's pretty deep, you've changed. So I thought it was really interesting knowing that and putting that in perspective there. Like,
right.
That's the moment where he thinks he's really been changed. It's fitting, and I really liked it. I get a little teary-eyed every time I see that scene.
Yeah, that was a really nice scene.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like, seeing the beauty that's out there in the world and just being so moved by it.
Yeah, and we're both at the point, we're young adults, and we've both gone away to school. You've gone to another country.
Mm-hmm.
We've both had these sort of, I think it's safe to say, we've both had these moments of being away from home and missing it, and at the same time feeling like it wouldn't be the same if you came back.
Oh, of course.
And, as an adult, that's a pretty, it's like, oh man, like that's a big punch.
Yeah.
Were there any other things? I like the animation. I like it. It's not like the most fluid, but I always thought of it more as like a woodblock sort of looking animation. Like, everything looked very carved out of wood.
Yeah.
As far as the character designs go, I like most of them. I think the only one I don't like is the elves, right?
Oh yeah, the elves
what
are
about
weird
you?
looking.
They also have like thick, I don't even know, would you call it like southeastern European accents?
Something like that.
Like they're like Albanian or something.
Yeah, the animation, the character designs are pretty cool. I mean, Bilbo is a really ugly main character. He's got
that's actually a really interesting thing, to have an ugly hero.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I love it. I'm like, let's get some diversity in there. Let's get an ugly guy in there.
He's got like these big triangle lines above his eyes, and he's just not very nice to look at. I mean, you get used to it after a little bit, and it doesn't like detract from his likability as the main character, but it's just kind of funny. And I guess that's pretty standard, Rankin and Bass, two-dimensional animation kind of thing.
Quirkiness.
The dwarves and Gandalf, I really liked their designs because they're like not necessarily ugly so much as like old and wizened, and like you see all these cracks and
the wrinkles
on their
it looks
face.
like they've been finally chipped away, like cracks and wrinkles.
I think that kind of thing is really fitting for like the type of fantasy story that it is, and I think the same thing in their other movie for The Last Unicorn, where you also had characters who were like really short and squat and had like gigantic bulbous noses, or
really tall people with really skinny legs.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually I really liked Smaug's design. He looked very cat-like in this film.
Yeah, he definitely did.
I've seen just in, you could Google Smaug the Dragon. There's so many different interpretations of what he looks like, and I think it's because in the book he doesn't really have as much characterization as much as like his features, because he talks about like his claws, his wings, his teeth, but there isn't much to say about like his face or maybe like the size of his feet. Like they're big, but Smaug's more about his personality, and I do like that there's enough wiggle room in that character design to have a fresh design.
Yeah.
And you could say that about all the characters too. Like, it's mostly about their personalities, a little bit about their their general makeup. Like hobbits have hairy feet and they're short and they're kind of plump.
Yeah.
But you look at a Bilbo in this, and then you look at Bilbo in the Peter Jackson adaptation. It's played by Martin Freeman,
and it's very different.
Yeah, it's very different, and Martin Freeman's by no means a fat person at all. But Bilbo is a pretty plump little fellow in this.
Yeah.
The Smeagol scene, the Riddles in the Dark, I really like that scene. I didn't really have as much appreciation for it as a kid, but we talked about it a little bit. Would you like to talk about it?
I really liked it. I really liked Smeagol's design in this. He was like a mix between a frog and a turtle. And he had like these really big eyes that were really droopy and lidded, and like they were
opaque,
hardly ever open more than like maybe a quarter of the way.
Yeah.
And they were blank and really creepy and dull, and I really liked his design.
I think what I like about him now that I appreciate after I'm talking, I have the Lord of the Rings trilogy right next to me. What I really like about it is in the Peter Jackson adaptation of the depiction of Smeagol, he's sort of, I would say, whimsical, but he's definitely a little over the top, and that works fine because Smeagol is. But in this one, he's very very laid back and depressed.
Yeah.
And I think the actor's name for that is just called Theodore. He was like a performance artist, but anyway, like he did a really good job of capturing. And one of the things I notice now is like the way he says Gollum is like a ribbit. It's like it's like I can't really do it well. It's like Gollum. But in the Peter Jackson one, I'll be referencing that a lot. The Peter Jackson one, it's like blah, blah.
Like a hairball.
like a cat, which is what Andy Serkis said specifically was influenced, to him. But this one I do like, and it's a different sense, and Gollum is more creature-like. And knowing what you know about Lord of the Rings, or even Gollum's history, it's like, oh, that thing was a hobbit.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like that thing doesn't even look remotely like Smeagol. You can kind of see a little bit.
Yeah.
Not that much, but like this thing looks like you said, frog, turtle-like, and he doesn't even have like eyes. They're like just these weird marbles of glazed over.
Yeah.
They're so cool. And like the anger that he has when Bilbo goes ta ta and like runs away from him. Oh, I love it. Like the rage that he has. He still is precious, man.
Definitely. Oh, one more thing. I just want to say it was really funny that...
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about.
When the dwarves were running away from the goblins, which I really liked the goblin songs. They reminded me of They Might Be Giants. I think probably because of like the really, really deep bass.
Yeah, the gravelly bass.
But they were running away from them in the caves, and Bilbo was like, he was piggybacking on one of the dwarves, and then all of a sudden he just kind of goes whoop, and he falls right off and down the cave. And I was watching that, and it looks like the guy just kind of dropped him. And then the dwarf kind of came back and was looking around like, oh no, where's Bilbo? I totally didn't mean to just ditch him.
The line is, Bilbo, he's gone!
Yeah.
And he goes, Bilbo! And like, it's just like, I'm not gonna look for you, but I'm gonna stand over here. I know there's a big hole in the ground.
That I just kind of dropped you into. Yes, not a comfy hobbit hole, but one that was definitely dark. That was a dark, wet hole. And unpleasant.
Although I can't read that line with the same innocence that I had as a 10-year-old.
I know.
I won't go any further than that. But yeah, no, I never considered that. I'm like, oh, Bilbo just fell off. But you were like, no, that guy definitely threw him off. And I thought about it, and it could make sense, because at that point in the story, the dwarves don't really value. They don't really value him. They kind of think of him as a 14th wheel, I guess you'd say, because he's the lucky number.
Yeah.
I guess our closing remarks. I think by now everyone would at least know from me. I love this movie. I highly recommend it. The main points I would definitely say are the music. Definitely. If you're a Tolkien fan, I'd say give it a watch. There's some things that maybe you wouldn't like that they leave out. Like, there's no Beorn, unfortunately. For all those Beorn fans out there, they don't talk. I don't even know if Tom Bombadil's in this. Tom
No, I
Bombadil
don't think
fans
so.
need to get a grip.
Yeah, and I thought that it was charming. It was
Yeah, it was
cute.
definitely charming.
It was a fun watch. The music was really good. There were some funny lines and funny scenes. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching. If you like our shows, then please like or comment or subscribe. Let us know if we missed anything or, if you disagree or agree. So, yeah, we're Discount Ramblepants.
And always remember, adventures will make one late for dinner. Good night, good afternoon, good morning,
See you next time.
good tea time. Bye-bye.